Another area to consider for maintenance are your spokes and your wheels. Now, most of the time your spokes are probably going to be fine, but if you're a heavier rider, you do more miles, or you've got a more powerful hub motor, you could find some spokes starting to loosen up. If that happens and you don't pay attention, the more those spokes loosen, the more tension goes on other spokes, the more those loosen. Eventually it's a runaway condition where you start breaking spokes and you can't fix it. So you want to check early on and often to make sure your spokes are good. The easiest way is to simply run your fingers along your spokes. Make sure they all feel like they're at the same tension. If they all feel like they're at the same tension, then you're probably good. If you hear a rattling spoke, you know that one's loosened up. And you're going to need a spoke wrench to tighten it up. If you don't have a spoke wrench, you can find them real cheap all over, but you might have one and not realize it. If you have one of these bike multi-tools that come with a lot of e-bikes, open up this wrench. Among the different sizes, you probably have one for spoke nipples. The nipple is the end of the spoke here. There are different sizes of nipples. Do with that what you may. So hopefully this is going to be the right size for your bike. In this case, it actually is. This one says it's a 14 gauge. So let's try that out and make sure we fit. And we do, so perfect. Now you do need to be careful messing with your spokes. If you don't know what you're doing and you over tighten or over loosen them, you're gonna get your wheel out of true. All you wanna do if you find a loose spoke is tighten it up just enough so it's tight again and it's at a similar tension. You can even do the guitar method and kind of pluck the spokes and you'll hear a little bit of a ding like a guitar string. You wanna make sure you match that. You don't wanna over tighten these things because you're gonna walk your rim out of true. I did a whole video on truing wheels. I'll put a link to that up here if you want to get into that. It's a little bit more than beginner maintenance. Now while I'm down here, let's talk about one other area of maintenance, and that is checking all of the bolts on your bike. I'm not saying you got to do it every time you get on your bike, but believe it or not, things do loosen up, and it's even happened to me. Just a few weeks ago, I was riding a bike I ride often. It wasn't this one, but I started hearing a weird noise behind me. I turn around and look, and I see that the kickstand is hanging off of the bike. One of the two bolts that holds it on had fallen out and the kickstand was just dangling there, dragging on the street. So even someone like me who you would think knows a thing or two about bikes, even I forget to check some of these things from time to time. So it's a good idea to just go around your bike, look at all the important bolts, make sure everything's on there. Things like brakes, things like your headset bolts, things like your steering stem, all of this stuff is critical. If any of these things were to loosen up, it could be very dangerous. A kickstand falling off, not as important as long as it doesn't go into the spokes, but certainly any critical bolts you want to inspect fairly often. Just make sure they're all torqued down nice and tight, nothing's loose and rattling. If you're really worried about it, you can make it easy on yourself by taking a paint pen and just putting a line across the bolt onto the bike or onto the brake caliper, whatever it lines up with. And that way you can just look at it and see if the line lines up, you know you're good and the bolt hasn't moved, or there's the freak chance where it turned an entire 360 degrees, but that usually doesn't happen. Now, if you have a folding bike like this one, this is the 8.0 Air, you're going to want to check these bolts and the folding mechanisms as well, because it's critically important that those stay where they are, that they stay tight. Either of these folding mechanisms, either in the middle of the bike or at the handlebars here, if they were to come loose, that could be very dangerous. So you want to make sure you're checking these when you're going around and checking your important bolts to ensure that everything is safe and ready to ride each time you hop on the bike. Now the one last common maintenance step that I would probably include would be cleaning your chain. However, you don't do it as frequently as these other things, and I've got a whole video I'm going to be doing soon on cleaning every part of your bike, and this is a belt drive bike, so I wouldn't be able to do it here anyways, but I'm gonna have a whole video on that soon. So this covers all of the major maintenance that I think you'll need on a more daily to weekly basis.